Jurassic World Dominion has finally come out, and I thought I'd give some of my views about it. This will be with spoilers, so if you haven't seen it already, watch out. I'll start with a ranking of the new creature designs and what they do. At number 1 has got to be the Lystrosaurus, which is a delight to see in such a big budget movie, and I love the way it assisted in the demise of Scott Hayes' character. Overall, it's a nice choice for a relatively docile species, and the practical effects on it are great. At 2 is the Dimetrodon, the other Permian species in the movie, and a fan favourite for most of us. Unlike most of the others in this list, it wasn't just muted colours, but had a nice vibrant orange sail and green body, which makes it a shame that we never got to see it in the daylight. When it first appeared with the sail cutting through the water, I couldn't help but think of the Spinosaurus in JP3. Alan Grant screaming at it was also funny. 3 is the Quetzalcoatlus, which looks stunning, and is one of the best designs in the trilogy. I can't think of much else to say other than it was very cool, and it served a decent purpose of getting the team into the facility, and having them to try and find another way out. The first actual dinosaur on this list is the Morus, because it had a very unique design, and was pretty cute. Even if it didn't really do anything, it was nice to have it there. It was one of the most accurate looking things on this list, as well as the Quetzalcoatlus. The Pyroraptor is at 5, because it was fairly decent, even if it looks like a severely aged pod from Dinosaur Planet. Having it swimming, whilst a surprising choice, made for some interesting action, and I would have preferred to have seen a squad of them rather than the Atrociraptors. Therizinosaurus comes in at 6, and whilst the head looks a bit off, the rest is okay. It had some good moments when it was stalking Claire, and when it just swiped the deer out of the way, that was pretty funny. I'm not sure how I just popped up for the final big boss battle fight extraordinaire, but it pulled the Dinosaur Revolution Rex death on the Giga, which was cool. I'm glad it wasn't just blue as well. The Microceratus was fairly ordinary, and I have nothing much to say about it. They missed out on using the Jurassic World website design in favour of something more bland, but it was still fine. At this point, the designs go rapidly downhill for me, unfortunately. Let's start with the Giganotosaurus. Oh dear. I wish I could like this design, but it's just Godzilla. It looks too much like a monster, and not enough like the real animal. And unfortunately, it's once again using the same blues and greys that every other design must have now. Gone are the days of designs with unique and interesting patterns. Let's just make everything... Despite the god-awful design, it had some good moments, but its looks really brought it down the list for me. Also, the fact that the ending with the Rex and Therizinosaurus basically teaming up to defeat it just felt like the end of Jurassic World, which didn't help, and wasn't the most original. The Dreadnoughtus was just an odd substitute for the Brachiosaurus. Plus it was practically all brown or grey, it's impossible to tell in the lighting, and basically was pretty pointless. They could have just stuck with the Apatosaurus, which is another design I don't like, but at least it's part of Jurassic World. Or better still, have the glorious JP3 Brachiosaurus, which gets too much hate in my opinion. And now we get to the Atrociraptors. Oh god. At least they tried to make them look a bit like the raptors from the Lost World and JP3, but the colours were so muted that it didn't really work. I actually have the 2 captives figures of them, and they look a lot better than they do in the movie. At least the chase sequence was cool and well paced, and helped distract you from how awful they actually looked. And now we reach the bottom of this list, and we get to Beta. Beta was just embarrassing. If Blue's design wasn't bad enough, we have to get an ugly baby to go along with her as well. At least she had a bit of an impact with the plot, and the characters interacted with her, but I didn't really like her at all. Phew! That was the new species. Now let's rank the species that appear that are also in previous films in the franchise. At this point, if you haven't guessed already, I should mention that I really don't like much, if any, of the designs of the species in the Jurassic World trilogy. They're also bulky and plain, with greys or blues, and there's no interest. They also ruined a lot of returning species from JP1 to 3 when they did Jurassic World, and unfortunately those designs have been carried over to this one. And after all the promotion of older designs and species in the previous films on the Dino Tracker, I was kinda hoping they'd include a few, especially the JP3 raptors. Oh well. Here are my rankings for the returning species. Dilophosaurus is easily the best species on this list, the one most requested by fans, and rightly so. Both the scenes it appeared in were brilliant, and the novelesque way they killed Dodson was very satisfying. I just wish it was longer. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was of course on top form, even if it was overused for promotional material, but its ending felt rushed. I enjoyed the scenes it had when fighting the Giga, which was pretty much all it did when it was on screen, but it was cool to see the Buck and Doe reappear, if only for a second. It seems a bit odd to include them there if they're not going to actually do anything though. Another fan favourite at number 3 was the Compsognathus. Even if they barely did anything, it was cool to see them get on Owen briefly, reminiscent of how Dita Stark died. Some more screen time for them would be good, I think. Parasaurolophus came in a couple of variations this time, one looking more like the Lost World variant and the other with a new design, which honestly was not too bad. They had some good moments early on, with Owen trying to wrangle one Gwangi style, and if any new species could have been included, it's some more hadrosaurs like Corythosaurus from JP3, just to go alongside them in those scenes. The mosasaur was only used sparingly again, just like in Fallen Kingdom, and I'm surprised it didn't have any impact on the plot, and managed to survive. Other than that, it's just kinda there. The three other carnivorous dinosaurs, Carnotaurus, Baryonyx, and Allosaurus, all rank the same for me really. None of them stand out, and none of their designs are amazing either. The Carno is probably the most interesting to look at, and the other two are okay, except for the crocodile scales and spines. The Allo and Carno that escaped during the Atrociraptor chase at least make a return to wreak havoc on the streets, and poor Scooter guy gets eaten. I was pleased to see that the Stegosaurus was holding its tail up, like the ones from the Lost World, but it was only in a very short segment, so there's nothing much else to say. Apatosaurus is just a dinosaur that is in this movie. Nothing more really. Sauropod portrayals in the franchise are often done well, but Dominion seems to have missed that. Blue was a bit disappointing in this movie. After the big role she played in the previous two, you'd expect her to do more, but she's absent for most of it. I was always under the impression that she'd be killed off in an emotional scene, but all that happened was the loss and the eventual reuniting of her and Beta. And out of all the Velociraptor designs in the Jurassic franchise, Blue is my least favourite because of her bulky appearance and grey and blue colouring, which every dinosaur has. Did I mention that? Her involvement almost feels unresolved, and she wasn't present for any of the plot with Biosyn, so just got sidelined. These last few get an equal ranking, since they only appeared either in the background or in one or two shots. Those species are the Ankylosaurus, Dimorphodon, Gallimimus, Nasutoceratops, Pteranodon, Sinoceratops, Digimoloch, and Triceratops. Apparently there are also Brachiosaurus and Iguanodon in this movie, but either they're not there, or I don't remember seeing them, given it's probably just a cameo, like the rest of them above. That's all the creatures, and as much as I've ranted about things I dislike there, that's only the designs. I really did enjoy this movie and the plot, and I'd rank it higher than the other two Jurassic World movies. Now let's move on to the characters. Of course, the biggest and best parts for me were the inclusion of Grant, Sattler, and Malcolm. They all have such chemistry together and play off each other's personalities really well. Grant is as great as I remember him in the other movies, though perhaps slightly more light-hearted than his appearance in JP3, but he was just as fun to watch on screen as he ever was. It was very nice to see that he and Ellie finally got together at the end, after the strange choice to split them in 2001, and I'm very glad they addressed the Mark Douglas situation in a small but important scene. Something for us JP3 fans to cheer about anyway. He also had some very funny moments, like falling off the ladder after seeing the Dimetrodon, and desperately saving his hat, Indiana Jones style. Also having him get confused by Ian Malcolm is great, and having him getting angry over the coffee as well was a highlight. Ellie had quite a lot to do in this movie as well, which made up for her not being in JP3 as much. She had a lot of chemistry with Claire as well, but mostly being teamed up with Grant was nice to see. Unfortunately, I still feel like she didn't have as much to do, but she was still important to the plot, and obviously it was great to see her again. Her interactions with Grant were wonderful, and it was also nice that she connected to Maisie, which I didn't expect. The way Malcolm is introduced, we're led to assume that he's working for Biosyn, which fortunately isn't the case. He was also on top form, delivering his trademark one-liners and acting more like his Lost World portrayal. Almost surprisingly, he doesn't say much about the dinosaurs, unlike his scenes in Fallen Kingdom, but perhaps he's just accepted that they're here now and they can't get rid of them. He also guides Ellie and Claire to the security box, much like in Jurassic Park, and I'm pleased they didn't make him an antagonist. I was also surprised that all three of these characters survived. I was expecting at least one of them to die, but I was pleased to be wrong. Wu seems to have gone under a complete personality shift and is now one of the good guys, and if it weren't for the weird locust plot, which I'll get to soon, I was convinced he was going to suffer a gory death, but instead he survived, which is still fine. He just became an anti-hero. Owen, Claire and Maisie were all just as good as their Fallen Kingdom appearances, Maisie becoming even more likeable and having some good story development. Owen and Claire meanwhile haven't changed much really, but are still very good characters. All the character interactions were very well done, especially between the original trio, but also with the other characters. The other new faces were well fitted to the roles, as either henchmen or mercenaries, but they lacked personality. The standout of all the new characters was definitely Lewis Dodson. Even if he's not entirely new, this was a fresh look at the character. I enjoyed his subtle humour and aggression, and also his lack of foresight, which ultimately led to his death. He was very entertaining to watch, and I like that he wasn't just a complete antagonist like Mills before him, and appears even friendly towards the 1993 gang. Zia and Franklin also got minor roles in this movie, which was nice, but they got forgotten about fairly quickly when the plot moved along. Barry had a few moments as well, but also disappeared halfway through. The two new protagonists, Ramsey and Kyla, were both well-done characters with their own roles to play. Both formerly working with Biosyn and Dodson, they turn over to helping the other protagonists, but ultimately get sidelined near the end. That's all the characters covered. Now let's take a look at other elements of the movie. The plot overall was fairly well done and well paced, with a manageable amount of action, although it did feel like they were just jumping from one dinosaur interaction to another in places, but the plot was still able to move forward, which was good. There are also a decent amount of dialogue-heavy moments, which only adds to the character chemistry. I think Dodson was one of the best aspects of the movie, and Maisie's discovery about her mother was also very good. The whole locust subplot, meanwhile, was a bit odd in my opinion, and it felt a bit unnecessary. I get that it aided in bringing all the story elements and characters together, but ultimately I didn't like it very much. Still though, it feels like something Dodson would do to keep his power. There weren't as many callbacks to the other films as I was expecting from a movie which brands itself as the conclusion or combination of all the others, but the few that we did get were good, like the Barbasol can in Dodson's office, the Velociraptor resonating chamber in Grant's tent, the Sauna embryonics facility in the background of Charlotte Lockwood's video, Charlotte standing in front of the JP gates, and of course the buck and doe Tyrannosaurus from The Lost World, for a split second near the end. The music was quite a letdown for me. I don't know, maybe once I listen to it on its own or watch the movie again I'll enjoy it more. But it didn't have much of an impact, and it lacked enough motifs to have proper themes. There was a lot of reused music from the previous Jurassic World films, and not much original content. I did however pick up on the use of lots of flutes in the orchestra, which was what JP3 had quite a lot of, so that was cool. But there wasn't much to compare it to The Lost World, and we didn't even get a full Jurassic Park theme, only aspects of it when the 1993 characters were on screen. But overall I did enjoy this movie quite a lot, and I'd rank it about an 8 out of 10, with Jurassic World and Battle at Big Rock being at 7, Fallen Kingdom and the Prologue being at 6, and the original 3 being at 10. It was a good movie, just not the best, but it was still very enjoyable. Thank you very much for listening to this very, very shoddy review. Please like, comment and subscribe.